Who's the best athlete you've come into contact with? And mate, I know there's so many characteristics of a good athlete, but if you go unfiltered and maybe one or two the names that come to the forefront of your mind that you share based on all your years of working with some of the best athletes in the world, who comes up consistently?
Uh, on athletic ability or an ability in their sport?
But that whatever comes up, mate. Let's just
Yeah,
go with what you think.
it's fascinating. Sometimes there's just you come across some freaks, but not necessarily always from an athletic perspective. Because I don't think in rugby we don't have the world's best athletes. Like you wouldn't have
Front
the
rowers.
strongest. Yeah, yeah. So you're not necessarily going to have the purest, strongest, or fastest, or highest jumper in the world because they've got to be good at multiple things.
Hmm.
But within the sport, like, there's a couple of really impressive athletes. There's Will Jordan, who plays for the Crusaders and the All Blacks at the moment. Just he's exceptionally fast, but he's one of those real gliders. Is when he's running, he doesn't look like he's running that fast, but he's actually got like he hits some impressive speed numbers, but as a real glider. But his anticipation and ability to just be in the right place at the right time is um, far too often to just be luck. And so there's that real gear of athletic ability and speed to kind of beat the defender or to be in the right place at the right time, but to understand where to be at the right
Hmm.
place at the right time and have the speed to get there is kind of one of those combinations. I don't know if I've ever worked in a game or watched a game where he hasn't scored a try. Um,
The
and
Wayne
so just
Gretzky of rugby union. You know how you said some players just have
yeah,
that. Where does Wayne Gretzky go? He doesn't go where the game is. He goes where the puck's going to be. You know that saying for Wayne
yeah,
Gretzky?
yeah. Well, it was a really interesting. I remember I was either listening to somebody or reading an article. I can't remember what it was. Someone talking about Darren Lockyer at the Broncos and
Mm.
talking around his. It was somebody speaking about or explaining around not being able to use GPS numbers and metrics to determine performance. Like you can use it to determine load, but you can't really look at the GPS data and see whether somebody played well. And when somebody's that experienced and knows the game that well, they may have some of the lowest numbers on the team because he's two steps ahead anyway, and so he's
Yeah.
incredibly efficient and he's just in the right place at the right time and his GPS numbers aren't going to tell you whether he played well or not, but his impacts in the game are. But they're going to tell you the kind of loading that he might need over the next week, but they're not going to. It's not the scoreboard and it's not the video analysis that's going to help you figure out specifically how to play the game better. And even asking like who's the who runs the best Bronco. But we had Kieran Read at Crusaders who had never actually gone under 5 minutes in a Bronco. Whereas if you were building a loose forward world class, you would say 435, 440, 445, something like that is you're in a really good category for a loose forward. But Rito's exceptionally fast and but incredibly experienced and has a great rugby brain and is an amazing leader. He's probably the person who I've seen as the best at in an in-game huddle, unpicking the puzzle in front of him that is the game and the opposition and how it's going and if what we're doing is working or not and what we should do next. So there's probably one thing I've found really fascinating, just getting to work with the level of players, the Richie McCaws, the Dan Carters, Kieran Reads, the Richie Mwangas, just through Crusaders,
Mm.
is that they're just how much of their ability isn't necessarily their athletic ability, but they each have a different athletic quality that helps with their greatness, but it's not completely determined by that. And so, somebody in a pure athlete, so athletic output sport might be different.
Yeah.
A Usain Bolt is incredibly fast, in a straight line, but and it has an unbelievable sort of mindset towards success. But yeah, it's quite different in a multifactorial sport like rugby. It's not always the athletic ability, but it's certainly a contributing factor for some. Which I've always found really interesting. I know I started out thinking it's all down to how much fitter and faster and stronger and better, we kind of make them as athletes, but uh, the better they are at the game and the better they understand the game kind of determines more of the success as long as their athletic ability, they might have one superpower, or as long as they don't have too many handbrakes, whether that's injury or things that are limiting factors physically. And so we almost go about a process of wanting to make them better, but it's more about reducing their limiting factors while they become better and better at their sport.
Yeah.
and maximizing their one superpower that they might have that makes them the best in the world at what they do.
Are there some common characteristics of all those names that you just threw up there? Will Jordan, Kieran Read, and then you went through the greats, Dan Carter. And is there some common characteristics that you've observed from these that if I'm an athlete sitting there right now going, if there's anything that I want to take from this conversation with someone such as Simon, who has been around the best athletes in the world in rugby and outside of rugby, and he observed this from these guys, what would you say?
I think there's the one common thread is probably their, what would you call it, a level of focus. So like even just because I think a lot of people ask around, what makes the Crusaders the best in the world or whatever it may be, is actually just there isn't any magical remedy of things that are done there. It's just being able to focus on relentlessly doing the basics without getting sick of it. And so there's a level of switch on and switch off that different people have in different ways. So Dan Carter is a very very sociable person, is very good at switch on, switch off, and he's not always serious. But when the time comes to be on and execute, he's there. And in the present, has got a great mindset and professionalism around how he gets himself there and doesn't. And his book that he's sort of released recently around the art of winning is got some really good parts in it that sort of speak about that. But then there's others who are quite intense all the time, but they've found that that's almost what works for them. But their ability to be on and in the right space at the right time is consistent across all of the high level performers that I've had the pleasure of seeing go about their business on a daily basis, whether they're coaches or players. Some just live in that switched on mindset, and others have this amazing ability to switch off but be on when it counts, and then to stay on for as long as it takes to achieve their goal. It's the level of focus and the professionalism of understanding the way that gets you into the right mindset and the right level of focus at the right time is probably the consistent thing across all of those different athletes or players. Because then whatever their capability is, they maximize it at the right time.